Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon, watching the stars through the large front window. The ship had been traveling for 3 months, heading toward the outer edge of the Centauri system. This was humanity's farthest journey into space, and Jake felt both excited and nervous. "Captain, we're getting some strange readings," said Lisa Grant from her station. She was the communications officer, a young woman with short brown hair and sharp eyes. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of readings?" "Multiple ships, sir. Big ones. They just appeared on our sensors about 10 minutes ago." Lisa's voice was steady, but Jake could hear the worry underneath. "They're not like anything in our database." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Earth had sent the New Horizon to explore, but they had always known they might meet other intelligent life. The question was whether that life would be friendly or not. "How many ships?" Jake asked. "At least 12, sir. Maybe more. They're arranged in some kind of formation around us." Lisa looked up at him. "Captain, I think they've been waiting for us." Dr. Amanda Cole, the ship's science officer, hurried onto the bridge. She was a tall woman with gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. She had been studying the long-range sensors in her lab when the ships appeared. "Captain, these readings are incredible," Amanda said, holding a data pad. "The energy signatures are unlike anything we've ever seen. These aren't human ships." Jake nodded grimly. "I figured as much. Lisa, can you try to make contact?" "I've been trying, sir. No response on any of our usual frequencies." Lisa paused, then added, "But wait. I'm getting something now." The bridge fell silent as Lisa worked at her station. After a moment, a sound came through the speakers. It was like nothing any of them had ever heard, a mix of musical tones and electronic buzzing that somehow formed patterns. "It's a language," Amanda whispered. "They're trying to communicate." "Can you understand any of it?" Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. "Not yet, but the computer is working on it. Give me a few minutes." Ryan Phillips, the chief engineer, came running onto the bridge. He was a stocky man with oil stains on his uniform and worried eyes. "Captain, our engines just shut down. Something is interfering with our power systems. Can you fix it?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, sir. It's like something is holding us in place. The engines are running, but we're not moving." Jake looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there, alien ships were surrounding them. The New Horizon was trapped, and they had no idea what the aliens wanted. "Captain," Lisa called out excitedly, "I think I've got something. The computer has found some patterns in their language." A new voice came through the speakers. It was still strange, but now it was speaking words they could understand. The voice was cold and mechanical. "Attention bipedal vessel. You will prepare for inspection. Do not attempt to resist." The bridge crew exchanged worried glances. Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earthship New Horizon. Who are we speaking with?" "I am Commander Kethvar of the Hegemony Forward Fleet. You are in violation of restricted space, Bipeds. Your primitive vessel will be examined and classified." Jake didn't like the way the alien said bipeds. It sounded like an insult. "We come in peace. We're explorers from Earth, seeking friendly contact with other civilizations." There was a sound that might have been laughter. "Friendly contact? You are bipeds. Your kind lacks the intelligence for meaningful communication. You will surrender your vessel for proper evaluation." Amanda stepped closer to Jake and whispered, "Captain, they seem to think we're not very smart because we walk on 2 legs." "That's ridiculous," Jake whispered back. Commander Kethvar's voice came through the speakers again. We have studied your species for many rotations. Bipedal forms indicate limited brain development and aggressive tendencies. However, you have achieved basic space travel, which is unusual for your type. This requires investigation. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. We're willing to meet with you and answer your questions, but we won't surrender our ship. You misunderstand, Biped. This is not a request. Your vessel is already under our control. Prepare for escort to Kepler Station. Ryan looked at his controls and shook his head. Captain, they're right. Something is pulling us along. I can't break free. Through the front window, Jake could now see shapes moving in the darkness. The alien ships were huge, much larger than the New Horizon. They glowed with strange lights and moved in ways that seemed impossible. How many different types of ships are there? Jake asked Amanda. Amanda studied her readings. At least 4 different designs, sir. Each one seems to use completely different technology. Lisa was still listening to the alien communications. Captain, I'm picking up chatter between their ships. They're talking about us like we're some kind of curiosity. They keep calling us the walking ones and ground-bound primitives. What else are they saying? Jake asked. Something about previous encounters with bipedal species. It sounds like they've met others like us before, but those species were much less advanced. Lisa frowned at her screen. They seem surprised that we have spaceships at all. Elena Vasquez, the security chief, entered the bridge. She was a tough woman with short black hair and muscles that showed through her uniform. Captain, I've got the crew ready for anything. What's our situation? Jake quickly explained what was happening. Elena listened carefully, then said, So, they think we're stupid because we walk on 2 legs? That seems to be the idea, Jake replied. Elena smiled grimly. Well, they're about to learn how wrong they are. The alien ships began moving, and the New Horizon was pulled along with them. Jake watched as they traveled deeper into space, heading toward whatever this Kepler station was. Lisa, can you get a message back to Earth? Jake asked quietly. I think so, sir, but it might take some time. Do it. Tell them what's happening here, and tell them to be ready for anything. As the New Horizon was escorted away by the alien fleet, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that humanity was about to face its biggest test. The aliens thought humans were primitive because they walked on 2 legs. They had no idea what humans were really capable of. Jake looked around at his crew. Each of them was smart, brave, and ready to fight if necessary. The aliens were in for a surprise if they thought bipeds were easy to handle. The journey to Kepler station would take several hours. Jake decided to use that time to learn everything he could about their captors. If the hegemony wanted to underestimate humanity, that might just be the advantage the New Horizon needed. The journey to Kepler Station took 6 hours. During that time, the crew of the New Horizon watched their alien escorts carefully. Captain Jake Morrison had ordered everyone to learn as much as possible about the hegemony ships. Dr. Amanda Cole spent most of the trip studying the alien vessels through the ship's sensors. She made careful notes about each type of ship and how they moved through space. The crystalline ships are fascinating, she told Jake as they watched the escort fleet. They seem to move by vibrating at specific frequencies. The whole ship resonates like a giant musical instrument. Jake looked at the diamond-like vessels that sparkled in the starlight. What about the others? The slug-shaped ones leave some kind of trail behind them. I think they secrete a substance that lets them glide through space. Amanda pointed to her screen. And those energy beings, they don't seem to have solid ships at all. They're just pure light holding itself together. Security Chief Elena Vasquez had been watching the fourth type of alien ship. These looked like massive flying creatures with wings that stretched for miles. "Those wing ships are the biggest," she said, "but they move the slowest." Communications Officer Lisa Grant had been listening to the alien chatter throughout the journey. She had learned to understand more of their language as the computer analyzed their speech patterns. "They're talking about us constantly," Lisa reported. "The crystalline ones, they call themselves Zephyrians, keep making jokes about our crude locomotion methods." "What kind of jokes?" Jake asked. "Stuff like, how do they balance on just two appendages? And no wonder bipeds are so slow to think. All their energy goes to staying upright." Lisa shook her head. "They really think walking on two legs makes us stupid." Engineer Ryan Phillips had been trying to understand how the aliens were controlling the New Horizon. He had spent hours running tests on their engines and power systems. "It's like they're using some kind of tractor beam," Ryan explained to Jake. "But it's more sophisticated than anything in our science fiction movies. They're not just pulling us, they're somehow convincing our ship that it wants to go in their direction." "Can you break free?" Jake asked. Ryan shrugged. "Maybe if I overload the engines, but that might destroy the ship. I'd rather wait and see what happens at their station." As they approached Kepler Station, the crew got their first good look at hegemony architecture. The station was enormous, bigger than any human city. It looked like 4 different civilizations had built parts of it, then stuck them all together. One section was made of the same crystal material as the Zephyrian ships. Another section looked organic, like it had been grown rather than built. The third section seemed to be made of pure energy, constantly shifting and changing shape. The fourth section had massive landing bays designed for the flying ships. "It's beautiful," Amanda whispered as they got closer. "It's also heavily armed," Elena pointed out. She had been studying the station's defensive systems. "I count at least 50 weapons platforms, and that's just what I can see." The New Horizon was guided to a docking bay in what looked like the oldest part of the station. As they landed, Jake gathered his crew for a final briefing. "Remember, they think we're primitive," he said. "Let them keep thinking that for now. Watch everything, listen to everything, but don't give away how smart we really are." "What if they try to hurt us?" Elena asked. "Then we defend ourselves," Jake replied. "But let's hope it doesn't come to that." The docking bay doors opened, and the crew got their first look at their alien hosts. Commander Keth Var was a tall crystal being that looked like a walking diamond. Light pulsed through his transparent body as he moved. Behind him came representatives of the other species. The Morvan was a large slug-like creature that left a shiny trail as it slithered forward. The Nexari appeared as a ball of golden light that constantly shifted shape. The Vorthak was a winged being that walked on thin legs and kept its enormous wings folded against its back. "Welcome to Kepler Station, Bipeds," Commander Kethvar said. His voice came from somewhere inside his crystal body. "You will be processed, according to standard protocols for primitive species." Jake stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. We appreciate your hospitality." The crystal alien's light pulsed in what might have been amusement. "You will address me as Commander Kethvar, Walking One. Your primitive social structures are noted but not recognized here." Elena tensed beside Jake, but he held up a hand to keep her calm. "You will now undergo evaluation," the commander continued. "We must determine your species' potential usefulness. and threat level. The Morvan spoke next, its voice bubbling like thick liquid. Previous bipedal species have shown limited intelligence and high aggression. Standard procedure is work assignments or elimination. Amanda couldn't help herself. Elimination! The ball of light that was the Nexari pulsed brighter. Dangerous primitives cannot be allowed to spread through civilized space. But useful primitives can serve the hegemony in appropriate roles. The Vorthak spread one wing slightly and spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. Your species has achieved basic space travel. This is unusual for bipeds. Most never progress beyond simple tools. Jake realized that the aliens' prejudice wasn't just random hatred. They had apparently met other two-legged species before, and those species had been much less advanced than humans. How many bipedal species have you encountered? Jake asked, carefully. 17, Commander Kethvar replied. All were confined to single planets. All possessed limited technology. All showed high aggression and low intelligence. You are the first to achieve interstellar travel. The aliens led the human crew through the station. Jake was amazed by what he saw. Zephyrians moved by resonating with crystal pathways built into the walls. Morvans glided along special channels filled with their secretions. Nexari simply flew through the air as balls of energy. Vorthak used thermal updrafts to soar through the vast open spaces. Everything was designed for species that didn't walk. There were no stairs, no railings, no flat surfaces for bipedal movement. The aliens had to create special walkways just so the humans could move around. This is inefficient, the Morvan complained as workers installed temporary bridges for the humans. Bipeds require so much accommodation. It is only temporary, Commander Kethvar replied. Once evaluation is complete, special requirements will be unnecessary. Lisa had been listening to conversations throughout the station. She quietly reported to Jake what she was hearing. They're amazed that we can use tools at all, she whispered. Apparently, most bipedal species they've met could barely make fire. What else? Jake asked. They're planning some kind of test for us. Intelligence tests, physical tests, psychological profiles. They want to figure out what makes us different from other bipeds they've encountered. Jake nodded. This might be their chance to show the aliens what humans were really capable of. The aliens housed the crew in a section of the station that had been quickly modified with floors and basic furniture. It was comfortable enough, but Jake noticed. There were guards outside and no way to leave without permission. We're prisoners, Elena said bluntly once they were alone. For now, Jake agreed. But they're going to test us. That's our opportunity. Amanda was studying readings from her handheld scanner. Jake, this station is incredible. The technology here is hundreds of years ahead of ours in some areas. But in other areas... What? Jake asked. They seem to have never developed certain things that we consider basic. No redundant systems, no backup plans. Everything relies on their main technology working perfectly. Ryan nodded. I noticed that too. Their ships don't have any manual controls. If their main systems fail, they'd be helpless. Jake smiled grimly. The aliens thought bipeds were primitive. But humans had learned something from walking on two legs that these advanced species had apparently never learned. Always have a backup plan. Back on Earth, Admiral Carl Brooks was having the worst day of his career. He sat in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, staring at the message that had just arrived from deep space. The message had come through on a coded frequency that only a few people knew about. It was from Tony Reed, the navigator aboard the New Horizon. The message was hidden inside what looked like routine status reports, but Carl knew how to read between the lines. "Hostile alien contact," the decoded message said. "Multiple species, superior technology, humans considered primitive. Taken to station for evaluation. Send help." Carl stood up and walked to the large wall display that showed Earth's solar system. For 30 years, he had been preparing for this exact situation. The public knew about NASA and the space stations and the exploration ships like the New Horizon. What they didn't know about was the defense fleet. General Brooks, his aide, Lieutenant Colonel Susan Hayes, approached carefully. "Sir, we've confirmed the message. It's definitely from the New Horizon." Carl nodded grimly. "How long to mobilize the fleet?" 12 hours, sir. The Defiant, Ranger, and Victory are already loaded and ready. The smaller ships can be prepared within 6 hours. "Do it," Carl ordered, "and send word to all the black sites. We're moving to Defense Condition 1. While Admiral Brooks prepared Earth's secret defenses, the crew of the New Horizon was learning more about their captors. The aliens had begun their evaluation process, which mostly involved treating humans like interesting animals. Dr. Amanda Cole was the first to be tested. The Zephyrians brought her to a crystal chamber where she was asked to solve basic mathematical problems. The problems were so simple that Amanda worried it might be a trick. "What is 2 plus 2? The crystal alien asked, its body pulsing with light. "4, Amanda replied, wondering if this was some kind of joke. The aliens seemed amazed. They whispered among themselves in their musical language, and Amanda caught enough words to understand their surprise. "The biped can perform arithmetic," one of them said. "This is unusual." They gave her progressively harder problems, and Amanda solved each one easily. When they asked her to calculate the trajectory needed to orbit a planet, she not only solved it but also provided 3 different solutions depending on the desired orbital period. The aliens fell silent. Finally, Commander Kethvar entered the chamber. "You have demonstrated unexpected cognitive ability," he said to Amanda. "This requires further investigation." Meanwhile, Engineer Ryan Phillips was being tested by the Morvans. They had brought him to a chamber filled with broken machinery and asked him to identify what was wrong. Ryan looked at the alien devices with interest. The technology was far more advanced than anything humans had built, but the basic principles were familiar. He could see that one machine had a clogged power coupling, another had a misaligned energy resonator, and a third had what looked like a simple loose connection. "This one needs cleaning," Ryan said, pointing to the first machine. "This one needs adjustment. And this one just needs to be plugged in properly." The slug-like aliens were shocked when Ryan's suggestions actually fixed the machines. They had expected the primitive biped to be confused by technology that even some hegemony species couldn't understand. Security Chief Elena Vasquez faced the most challenging test. The Vorthak brought her to a training area and asked her to demonstrate human combat abilities. Elena had been expecting this and was ready. The winged aliens flew around her in complex patterns, testing her reactions. Elena moved with the fluid grace of someone who had trained in martial arts for 20 years. When they attacked, she defended herself with techniques that used her bipedal stance as an advantage rather than a weakness. "Impossible," one of the Vorthak said as Elena threw him to the ground using his own momentum against him. "Bipeds cannot move with such coordination." But it was Communications Officer Lisa Grant who made the biggest breakthrough. The Nexari had brought her to a chamber where they tested her ability to process information. They showed her complex patterns of light and sound, expecting her to be overwhelmed. Instead, Lisa began to see connections that even the energy beings had missed. She realized that the patterns weren't just random tests. They were fragments of a star map that showed hegemony territory. "You control 237 star systems," Lisa said suddenly. The Nexari flickered with surprise. "How did you determine this?" "The patterns show stellar positions and trade routes. I can see the connection points between your territories." Lisa paused, then added, "You've been expanding steadily for about 300 years, absorbing smaller civilizations. The ball of light that was the lead Nexari pulsed rapidly. No bipedal species has ever demonstrated such analytical capability. Meanwhile, Navigator Tony Reed had managed to slip away from the other tests. He found a computer terminal in an unused section of the station and began accessing the hegemony database. What he found made his blood run cold. The database contained records of the 17 bipedal species the hegemony had encountered. Each entry told the same story: first contact, evaluation, classification as primitive but potentially useful, or primitive and dangerous, and then either enslavement or elimination. The species that had been enslaved were used as manual laborers on worlds that other species found unsuitable. The species that had been eliminated were simply wiped out, their home planets strip-mined for resources. Tony realized that humanity was facing the same choice. The aliens would decide whether humans were useful enough to enslave or too dangerous to let live. But as Tony read deeper into the database, he discovered something that gave him hope. Every previous bipedal species had been limited to their home planet when the hegemony found them. They had simple tools, basic agriculture, and no real technology. Humans were completely different. They had already spread to multiple worlds, had advanced technology, and most importantly, had military experience. The hegemony had never faced a bipedal species that could actually fight back. Captain Jake Morrison was brought before the full Hegemony Council for a final interview. The chamber was enormous, designed to accommodate all 4 alien species. Commander Keth Var spoke for the group. "Your species presents an unusual situation," the crystal being said. "Previous bipedal encounters followed predictable patterns. You do not." Jake stood calmly in the center of the chamber, surrounded by aliens who considered him a primitive curiosity. "Perhaps your previous encounters weren't representative of all bipedal species." "Impossible," the Morvan bubbled. "Bipedal locomotion indicates specific evolutionary limitations. Limited brain development, reduced cognitive capacity, increased aggression. And yet," the Nexari pulsed, "your crew has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our projections." The Vorthax spread its wings slightly. "Your female warrior defeated 3 of our combat specialists. This should not be possible for a ground-bound primitive." Jake smiled. "Maybe the problem isn't with bipedal species. Maybe the problem is with your assumptions," the aliens whispered among themselves. Finally, Commander Kethvar spoke again. "We have decided to conduct extended evaluation. Your species will be classified as anomalous bipeds, pending further study." "And what does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means you will remain here while we study your capabilities more thoroughly. If you prove useful, you will be integrated into hegemony society in appropriate roles. If you prove dangerous—" The commander didn't finish the sentence, but Jake understood. Humanity was on trial, and the jury had already made up their minds about bipedal species. But Jake had one advantage the aliens didn't know about. Tony's hidden message had reached Earth, and Admiral Brooks was already on his way with ships the hegemony had never imagined. The aliens thought they were studying primitive bipeds. They had no idea they were about to meet the human military. The crisis began at 0300 station time, when alarms started blaring throughout Kepler Station. Captain Jake Morrison woke instantly, his military training kicking in as emergency lights flashed in the human quarters. Commander Kethvar's voice echoed through the station's communication system, but his usual calm was gone. The crystal being sounded panicked. All personnel to emergency stations. Solar event detected. Category 5 flare incoming. Shield generators at maximum power. Jake quickly woke his crew. Dr. Amanda Cole was already checking her handheld scanner, her face pale in the red emergency lighting. "Jake, this is bad," she said. "The energy readings are off the charts. This solar flare is going to hit the station in less than 2 hours." Through their quarters windows, they could see the alien crews running around in what looked like complete panic. The usually graceful Zephyrians were resonating at chaotic frequencies, their crystal bodies flickering with distressed light patterns. The Morvans were leaving confused slime trails as they slithered in circles. The Nexari energy beings were pulsing erratically, and the Vorthak were flying into each other in their haste. "They don't know what to do," Security Chief Elena Vasquez observed. "Look at them. They're completely lost." Engineer Ryan Phillips was studying the station schematics on his tablet. "I think I know why," he said. "Their technology is incredible, but it's all designed for stable conditions. They've never had to deal with emergencies like this." Lisa Grant was monitoring alien communications. "They're saying the shield generators are overloading. The energy from the flare is too strong for their systems to handle." Jake made a decision that would change everything. "Elena, gather everyone. We're going to help them." "Sir?" Elena looked confused. "They were planning to enslave or kill us. Right now, we're all going to die if that flare hits an unshielded station," Jake replied. "We can worry about their plans later." The human crew rushed out of their quarters, ignoring the alien guards who were too panicked to stop them. They found Commander Kethvar in the station's control center, his crystal body flickering rapidly as he tried to coordinate the emergency response. "Biped Morrison," the commander said when he saw Jake, "return to your quarters immediately. This situation is beyond primitive understanding." "Commander, we want to help," Jake said firmly. The crystal alien's light pulsed with what might have been laughter if he hadn't been so stressed. "Help? Your species lacks the cognitive ability to comprehend our technology." "Maybe," Jake said, "but we understand emergencies." Before Commander Kethvar could respond, one of the Morvan engineers came slithering over, leaving a trail of panic-scented slime. "Commander, the primary shield generator has failed. We cannot repair it in time." The station shuddered as the first waves of solar radiation hit the outer shields. Through the control center's windows, they could see energy crackling across the station's hull. Amanda stepped forward. "Commander, how much time do we have?" 93 minutes before the main flare arrives," a Nexari reported, its energy form flickering with stress. "Current shields will fail in 37 minutes. Ryan was already studying the alien control panels. The interface was completely foreign, but the basic principles of engineering were universal. "Amanda, can you help me understand their power distribution system?" While Ryan and Amanda worked on the technical problems, Elena took charge of organizing the evacuation procedures. She had noticed that the aliens were running around without any coordination. "You," she pointed to a group of Vorthak, Stop flying in circles and start evacuating the civilian areas. You, she directed a team of Morvans, seal the airlocks in sections that can't be shielded. The aliens stared at her in amazement. No. Biped had ever given them orders before, but Elena's calm confidence in the middle of chaos was exactly what they needed. How does she know what to do? One of the Zephyrians asked Commander Kethvar. I do not understand, the commander replied, watching Elena organize rescue teams with military precision. Jake had found the station's communication center and was working with Lisa to coordinate between different sections of the station. Lisa, can you patch me through to all sections? Got it, Captain, Lisa said, her fingers flying over the alien controls. Jake's voice echoed throughout the station. Attention all personnel. This is Captain Morrison. We have 35 minutes to save this station. I need damage control teams in sections 7 through 12, medical teams to the civilian areas, engineering teams to the backup power stations. Who? Authorize the biped to issue commands? A Morvan officer asked. I did, Commander Kethvar said quietly. He was watching his people follow Jake's orders with growing amazement. The primitive is demonstrating effective leadership protocols. In the engineering section, Ryan and Amanda were working miracles. Ryan had figured out how to reroute power from non-essential systems to strengthen the shields. Amanda was calculating the optimal energy distribution to protect the most critical areas of the station. Try routing power from the recreational facilities to Shield Grid 7, Amanda suggested. Ryan made the adjustments, and the shield strength increased by 15%. How did you know that would work? Basic physics, Amanda replied. Energy is energy, regardless of what technology you're using. The Morvan engineers watched in fascination as the two humans improved their systems using principles the aliens had never considered. With 20 minutes left before the main flare hit, Elena had successfully evacuated all the civilian areas and organized emergency response teams throughout the station. The Vorthak were amazed by her ability to coordinate ground-based operations, something their flying-based culture had never developed. The biped female understands tactical deployment, one of the Vorthak officers said to his commander. She has created defensive positions we never considered. Tony Reed had been working in the navigation center, helping to plot escape routes for ships that couldn't handle the radiation. His understanding of three-dimensional space movement was helping the aliens plan evacuations they had thought impossible. How? Does he calculate trajectories so quickly? A Nexari navigator asked. Bipedal spatial awareness, another replied. They must develop superior navigation skills to move effectively on planetary surfaces. With 10 minutes remaining, the station's shields were holding at 80% power. The aliens' best projections had predicted complete shield failure by now. Instead, human problem-solving had found solutions that alien technology couldn't achieve alone. Commander Kethvar found Jake in the control center, coordinating final preparations. Biped Morrison, the commander said, his crystal form pulsing with confusion. Your species demonstrates capabilities that conflict with all previous bipedal data. Maybe your previous data was incomplete, Jake replied, watching the shield status displays. Impossible. We have encountered 17 bipedal species. All showed identical limitations. Jake looked at the crystal alien. Commander, did any of those 17 species come from planets with dangerous weather? Predators? Natural disasters? No, Kethvar replied slowly. All were from stable, protected worlds. That's the difference, Jake said. Earth tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to work together, plan ahead, and adapt to anything. Your other bipeds never had to. The main solar flare hit Kepler Station with the force of a small star. Energy cascaded across the shields in brilliant displays of light and power. The station shook and groaned, but the shields held. In the control center, aliens and humans worked side by side, monitoring systems and making adjustments as needed. The barriers between species had dissolved in the face of shared danger. When the flare finally passed and the all-clear sounded, Commander Keth Var made an announcement to the entire station. All personnel, the emergency has passed. Station integrity is maintained. Casualty reports show 0 fatalities and minimal injuries. He paused, then added something that had never been said on a hegemony station before. This success was achieved through the combined efforts of all species present, including the bipedal humans. The humans demonstrated capabilities that exceeded all projections for their species type. Jake smiled as he heard aliens throughout the station talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. The word biped was no longer spoken with contempt. For the first time, it was spoken with respect. The Earth Defense Fleet arrived at Kepler Station just as the Hegemony Council finished their emergency meeting about the human problem. Admiral Carl Brooks commanded a force of 15 ships, led by the massive battleship Victory. They had traveled for 3 days at maximum speed after receiving Tony Reed's hidden message. Commander Keth Var was still trying to understand what had happened during the solar flare crisis, when his sensors detected the approaching human fleet. The crystal being's body pulsed with alarm as he realized the implications. "Impossible," he said to his officers. "The bipeds cannot have space military forces. No previous bipedal species achieved such coordination." But the approaching ships told a different story. The Earth vessels moved in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. These weren't exploration ships like the New Horizon. These were warships built by a species that had been preparing for hostile contact for decades. Admiral Brooks opened communication channels as soon as his fleet was in range. His voice was calm but carried the authority of someone who had commanded military forces for 30 years. "Hegemony forces, this is Admiral Carl Brooks of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are holding our people prisoner. Release them immediately." Commander Keth Var's response was predictably arrogant. "Admiral Brooks, you command primitive vessels operated by bipedal ground dwellers. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." "I don't think you understand the situation," Brooks replied. "We're not primitive, and we're not withdrawing. Release our people, or we'll take them back by force." The Hegemony commander made a fatal mistake. He had spent so long thinking of bipeds as inferior that he couldn't accept the evidence in front of him. Instead of trying to negotiate, he ordered his forces to attack. "All ships, destroy the biped vessels. Show them the power of civilized species." The space battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Hegemony had superior technology in many areas, but they had never faced an enemy that combined advanced weapons with tactical flexibility. The Zephyrian crystal ships attacked first, firing energy beams that could slice through most known materials. But the human ships didn't just try to absorb the damage. They used evasive maneuvers that the crystals couldn't predict, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully coordinated. "How are they dodging our targeting systems?" a Zephyrian captain asked in panic as human fighters weaved between his energy blasts. The answer was simple. Human pilots had learned to fly by watching birds, playing games, and training in simulators that taught them to think in 3 dimensions. The aliens relied on computer calculations that couldn't adapt to truly unpredictable movement. The Morvan ships tried to trap the human vessels using their slime trail technology, creating sticky barriers in space. But engineer Ryan Phillips, monitoring the battle from Kepler Station, had figured out how to counter their tactics. "Admiral, the slug ships are using organic polymers to create their barriers," he reported through the communication link that Captain Jake Morrison had established. "If you hit them with high-frequency sonic pulses, the barriers will break down." The human ships immediately adapted their weapons, and the Morvan barriers began dissolving. The slug-like aliens were amazed to see their supposedly unbreakable technology failing against biped countermeasures. The Nexari energy beings tried to overwhelm the human ships with pure power, firing massive energy bolts that could destroy planets. But the human ships had something the energy beings had never encountered: redundant systems. When a Nexari blast disabled the Defiant's main shields, the ship didn't explode. Instead, backup shields activated, secondary power systems came online, and the ship kept fighting. The energy beings couldn't understand how the bipeds had survived attacks that should have been instantly fatal. "Their ships refused to die," one Nexari reported in confusion. "We have disabled their primary systems multiple times, but they continue functioning." The Vorthak flying ships tried to use their superior speed and maneuverability, diving at the human vessels like giant space-borne predators. But they discovered that human ships were designed by a species that had been fighting aerial combat for over a century. Admiral Brooks had studied every aspect of military history, including the lessons learned from fighting flying enemies during Earth's wars. His ships used formation flying, coordinated defensive fire, and tactics that had been tested in thousands of battles. "Break formation and engage individually," the Vorthak commander ordered, trying to use their natural hunting instincts. It was exactly what Brooks had been waiting for. "All ships, implement Wolfpack protocol," he ordered. The human fleet split into small groups that surrounded and attacked individual Vorthak ships. The flying aliens found themselves outnumbered and outmaneuvered by opponents who understood pack hunting better than they did. On Kepler Station, Captain Jake Morrison and his crew watched the battle with growing pride and concern. They were proud to see humanity holding its own against superior technology, but they were worried about the destruction. "Jake, we need to stop this before someone gets seriously hurt," Dr. Amanda Cole said as she watched explosions light up the space around the station. "How?" Jake asked. "The hegemony started this fight." It was Security Chief Elena Vasquez who came up with the answer. "We show them what human coordination really looks like." Elena had been studying the station's defensive systems during the solar flare crisis. She realized that Kepler Station had weapons that could end the battle quickly, but the aliens were too panicked to use them effectively. "Commander Kethvar," Elena said to the crystal being, "your station weapons could stop this fight right now, but you need to coordinate with both fleets." "Impossible," the commander replied. "The bipeds will not listen to hegemony commands." "They'll listen to us," Jake said, "and we'll listen to you if you're willing to work together." For the first time in hegemony history, aliens and bipeds worked as equal partners. Commander Kethvar provided technical expertise about the station's weapons. Captain Morrison coordinated. With Admiral Brooks to position the human fleet safely, Elena organized the tactical deployment that would end the battle without destroying any ships. "All vessels, cease fire immediately," Jake broadcast on all frequencies. "Kepler Station is powering up its defensive grid. Any ship that continues fighting will be disabled." The massive weapons platforms around the station came online, their targeting systems locked onto every ship in the area. But instead of threatening destruction, they offered protection. "This is a safe zone," Amanda announced, using her scientific credentials to explain the situation. All vessels will be protected equally while we work out a peaceful solution. The battle ended not with conquest, but with curiosity. Alien commanders found themselves talking to human officers, comparing tactics and sharing experiences. The hegemony had never encountered opponents who could fight effectively and then immediately switch to peaceful cooperation. Admiral Brooks came aboard Kepler Station for face-to-face negotiations with the Hegemony Council. The meeting was tense. At first, with aliens who still couldn't quite believe that bipeds could be their equals. "You have demonstrated capabilities that contradict all previous bipedal data," Commander Kethvar admitted reluctantly. "That's because we're not like your previous encounters," Brooks replied. "We come from a dangerous planet that taught us to survive, adapt, and work together. We've been preparing for contact with other civilizations for decades." The Nexari, energy being pulsed thoughtfully. "Your species exhibits coordination protocols we have not observed in any bipedal form. Our species exhibits coordination protocols because we had to," Jake added. "On Earth, creatures that couldn't work together didn't survive." The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides learning things that challenged their assumptions. The aliens learned that bipedal locomotion didn't mean primitive intelligence. The humans learned that the hegemony's prejudice came from genuine experience with less advanced species. In the end, they reached an agreement that surprised everyone. The hegemony offered humanity full membership as equals, with the same rights and privileges as any other species. But Admiral Brooks had a different idea. "We appreciate the offer," he said, "but we think there's a better way. Instead of joining your existing system, why don't we create something new? A partnership between sovereign civilizations." "Explain," Commander Kethvar requested. "The hegemony has incredible technology and resources," Brooks continued. "Humanity has tactical flexibility and adaptive problem-solving. Instead of one group absorbing the other, we work together as independent allies." The proposal was revolutionary. The hegemony had always grown by absorbing smaller civilizations. The idea of equals working together was completely new, but the solar flare crisis had shown them something important. When different species combined their strengths instead of competing, they could accomplish things that none of them could do alone. The agreement was signed aboard Kepler Station, with representatives from all 5 civilizations present. Humanity would establish colonies and research stations throughout the former hegemony territory. In return, human military expertise would help protect all member civilizations from external threats. 3 months after the peace agreement, Captain Jake Morrison found himself facing a problem no human had ever encountered before. He was sitting in a conference room aboard New Geneva Station, surrounded by alien representatives who were all talking at once, and none of them could agree on anything. The meeting was supposed to be about establishing the first joint colony on Kepler Prime, a beautiful planet with 3 moons and perfect conditions for both human and alien settlements. Instead, it had turned into a chaos of conflicting ideas and cultural misunderstandings. Commander Kethvar's crystal body was pulsing rapidly with frustration. "The Zephyrian settlement must be built on the highest crystalline formations. Our resonance technology requires specific mineral compositions." The Morvan representative, a large slug-like being named Gloxmar, left an agitated slime trail as he moved around the table. "Impossible. The lowland marshes provide optimal conditions for our secretion systems. High-altitude locations are unsuitable for Morvan physiology." Flux 7, the Nexari energy being, flickered with annoyance. Both proposals ignore the electromagnetic requirements of energy-based life forms. We require locations with natural electrical activity. The Vorthak delegate, a winged creature called Wind Rider, spread her massive wings in irritation. None of these locations provide adequate thermal currents for proper flight patterns. Our settlements must be positioned to take advantage of atmospheric circulation. Jake listened to the arguments with growing amazement. These four species had worked together in the hegemony for centuries, but they had never actually tried to live in the same place. Each group had always taken separate planets or separate areas of space stations. Dr. Amanda Cole, who was serving as the human science advisor for the colony project, leaned over to whisper to Jake. "They've never done this before, have they?" "Apparently not," Jake whispered back. "The hegemony kept everyone separated. This is their first attempt at actually sharing a planet." Engineer Ryan Phillips was studying the planet's geological surveys on his tablet. "Jake, I think I see the problem. They're all trying to recreate their home environments instead of adapting to the new planet." Security Chief Elena Vasquez had been watching the alien body language throughout the meeting. "They're not really arguing about locations," she said, quietly. "They're scared. None of them know how to compromise." Jake realized that Elena was right. The aliens weren't being stubborn or difficult. They were facing something completely outside their experience. For centuries, the hegemony had solved problems by having the dominant species make decisions for everyone else. Now they were supposed to work as equals, and they didn't know how. "Excuse me," Jake said, standing up. The aliens stopped arguing and looked at him. "I have a suggestion." Commander Kethvar's light pulsed skeptically. "What can bipeds contribute to this discussion? Your species has no experience with multi-species colonization." Jake smiled. "You're right. We don't have experience with multi-species colonies, but we do have experience with something else." "What?" asked Glocksmar, leaving a curious scented trail. "We have experience with compromise," Jake said. "On Earth, humans come from all over the planet. We have different cultures, different needs, different ways of living. But we learned how to share the same spaces." The aliens exchanged glances. This was a concept they had never encountered. In the hegemony, different species lived in different areas. The idea of actually sharing the same territory was foreign to them. Amanda stood up and activated the holographic display in the center of the table. "Let me show you something," she said, bringing up images of human cities. "This is New York, city on Earth. In this one city, you have people from hundreds of different cultures living and working together." The aliens stared at the images in fascination. They could see humans with different skin colors, different clothing, different ways of moving through the city, all sharing the same streets and buildings. "How is this possible?" Flux 7 asked, his energy form flickering with curiosity. "How do different human subspecies coexist in such close proximity?" "We're not subspecies," Jake explained. "We're all the same species, but with different cultures, and we learn to live together by finding solutions that work for everyone." Ryan activated his own display, showing the geological survey of Kepler Prime. "Look at this planet. It has everything you need, just not all in the same place." He highlighted different areas of the planet as he spoke. "The northern mountains have the crystalline formations the Zephyrians need. The southern wetlands are perfect for Morven settlements. The equatorial regions have constant electrical storms for the Nexari, and the coastal areas have thermal currents ideal for Vorthak flight. But these locations are separated by thousands of kilometers," Wind Rider pointed out, How would we maintain contact and cooperation? Transportation networks, Elena said, joining the presentation. Humans build roads, tunnels, bridges, and air routes to connect different areas. You could do the same thing, but using your advanced technology. The aliens looked at each other uncertainly. The concept was simple, but it required something they had never done before, trusting other species to help them meet their needs. Communications Officer Lisa Grant had been monitoring news feeds from across hegemony space during the meeting. She had noticed something interesting in the reports coming from other worlds. "Captain," she said, approaching the table, "I think we need to move quickly on this colony project." "Why?" Jake asked. "I've been reading reports from across hegemony territory. There are problems everywhere. Without the old command structure, different species are having conflicts over resources and territory." She displayed a map showing dozens of star systems. Red markers indicated areas where there were disputes or problems. The hegemony kept the peace by keeping everyone separated, Lisa explained. Now that we've changed the system, they need to learn new ways of working together, or the whole alliance might fall apart. The alien representatives looked at the map with growing alarm. Commander Kethvar's crystal body was pulsing rapidly. "The biped speaks truth," he said. "Without the old hierarchies, our people do not know how to resolve conflicts." Then Kepler Prime isn't just about building a colony, Jake realized. It's about proving that different species can actually live and work together as equals. The key? Meeting took on a new urgency as the aliens realized what was at stake. If the Kepler Prime colony failed, it might be the end of the new alliance. If it succeeded, it could serve as a model for the rest of hegemony space. Over the next several hours, the human crew worked with the alien representatives to design something that had never existed before, a truly integrated, multi-species colony. The solution they developed was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to put all the settlements in one location, they would build specialized cities connected by rapid transportation systems. The Zephyrian Crystal City would be in the mountains, but connected to the Morvan Marsh settlements by high-speed tunnels. The Nexari energy stations would be linked to Vorthak aerial cities by electromagnetic transportation beams. "But what about the central government?" Glocksmar asked. "Where will the colony's administration be located?" "Everywhere," Amanda said. "The government doesn't need to be in one place. With your communication technology, the administrators can work from their own cities and coordinate through the network." It was Ryan who suggested the final piece of the puzzle. "We should build one more city," he said. "A meeting place where representatives from all the settlements can come together for important decisions." "Where would this meeting city be located?" Windrider asked. "Somewhere that's not perfect for any of us," Jake said. "Somewhere that requires all of us to make compromises. That way, no one species has an advantage over the others." The aliens looked at each other, then back at the humans. Slowly, Commander Kethvar's crystal form began to pulse with what Jake had learned to recognize as approval. "The bipeds demonstrate wisdom in this matter," the Zephyrian said. "Their solution requires cooperation rather than domination." As the meeting ended and the aliens began making plans for the new colony, Jake reflected on what had just happened. Humans had become more than just another member of a galactic alliance. They had become teachers, showing other species how to work together as equals. The word biped was taking on yet another meaning in the galaxy. It was becoming synonymous with mediator and problem solver. 6 weeks after the planning meeting, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the surface of Kepler Prime, watching the most ambitious construction project in galactic history unfold around him. The first multi-species colony was becoming a reality, but not without problems. The morning started with an emergency call from the Zephyrian construction site in the northern mountains. Commander Kethvar's voice came through the communication device with obvious stress. "Captain Morrison, we require immediate assistance. Our resonance builders are malfunctioning." Jake climbed into his ground vehicle and drove up the winding mountain road to the Crystal City site. What he found there made him understand why the Zephyrians were panicked. The crystalline construction machines that the Zephyrians used to build their cities worked by vibrating at specific frequencies that shaped raw crystal into buildings. But something was wrong. Instead of creating smooth, beautiful structures, the machines were producing jagged, unstable formations that collapsed as soon as they were built. "What's causing the malfunction?" Jake asked Commander Kethvar. The crystal being's light pulsed with confusion. "Unknown. The machines function correctly in our tests, but fail when building at full scale." Dr. Amanda Cole arrived a few minutes later, carrying a bag full of scientific instruments. She had been studying the planet's geology for weeks, trying to understand how the different environments would affect each species' technology. "Commander, can you show me the resonance patterns your machines are using?" Amanda asked. Kethvar activated a display that showed complex waveforms. Amanda studied them carefully, then pulled out her own scanner and took readings from the surrounding area. "I think I know what's wrong," she said after several minutes. "Your machines are calibrated for the crystal formations on your homeworld, but Kepler Prime has different mineral compositions. The resonance frequencies that work on your planet don't work here." "Impossible," Kethvar replied. "Crystal resonance is universal." Amanda smiled gently. "Crystal resonance is universal, but the specific frequencies needed to shape different types of crystals are not. You need to recalibrate your machines for the local minerals." It took 3 days of careful adjustments, but Amanda's solution worked. The Zephyrian construction machines began producing beautiful crystal buildings that were perfectly suited to Kepler Prime's unique environment. While Amanda was solving the crystal problem, engineer Ryan Phillips was dealing with a different crisis at the Morvan settlement site. The slug-like aliens had brought their secretion-based technology to build in the southern marshlands, but their organic construction systems were failing. "The problem is the bacteria," Ryan explained to Glocksmar as they stood in the middle of what should have been a thriving Morvan city. "Your secretions work by interacting with specific microorganisms. But Kepler Prime has different bacteria than your homeworld." The Morvan's eye stalks drooped with disappointment. "Our building methods are useless here?" "Not useless," Ryan said. "Just different. We need to find the right bacteria on this planet, or introduce some from your homeworld." Working with Morvan biochemists, Ryan developed a solution that combined local microorganisms with imported cultures from the Morvan home world. Within a week, the organic building systems were working better than ever, creating structures that were perfectly adapted to Kepler Prime's environment. The Nexari faced their own challenges in the equatorial regions. The electrical storms that should have powered their energy-based construction systems were interfering with their delicate equipment. Flux 7's energy form flickered with frustration as he explained the problem to Security Chief Elena Vasquez. "The electromagnetic patterns are chaotic," the energy being said. "Our systems require predictable electrical flows, but this planet's storms are wild and uncontrolled." Elena had been watching the storm patterns for days, using her military training to look for tactical solutions. "What if you don't try to control the storms?" she suggested. What if you work with them instead? Explain, Flux 7 requested. In Human Military Tactics, we learned that sometimes the best way to deal with a chaotic situation is to adapt to it rather than fight it. Maybe your technology could be modified to use chaotic energy instead of controlled energy. Working with Nexari engineers, Elena helped develop new systems that could harness the wild electrical storms of Kepler Prime. The result was Nexari buildings that were more powerful and efficient than anything they had built before. The Vorthak had what seemed like the simplest problem, but it turned out to be the most complex. The thermal currents in Kepler Prime's coastal areas were perfect for their flight, but they couldn't figure out how to build cities that took advantage of the air currents without disrupting them. Wind Rider explained the dilemma to communications Officer Lisa Grant as they soared high above the proposed construction site. Our traditional cities block the very air currents we need to fly. But without cities, we cannot establish a permanent settlement. Lisa had been studying the Vorthak culture and their relationship with flight. She realized that the problem wasn't technical, it was conceptual. Why do your cities have to be on the ground? She asked. Wind Rider's wings fluttered with surprise. Where else would cities be? In the air, Lisa said. You're the best flyers in the galaxy. Why not build cities that float in the thermal currents instead of blocking them? Working with Vorthak architects, Lisa helped design floating cities that rode the air currents like giant kites. The cities moved slowly through the sky, following the thermal patterns and maintaining perfect flight conditions for all Vorthak residents. As each species solved their construction problems, a new challenge emerged: the transportation systems that were supposed to connect the different settlements were proving more difficult than anyone had expected. The high-speed tunnels between the crystal cities and marsh settlements kept collapsing because the two construction methods weren't compatible. The electromagnetic beams connecting the energy stations to the flying cities interfered with both systems. The ground vehicles couldn't navigate between the different environments. Jake called an emergency meeting of all the construction teams. Representatives from all 4 alien species gathered in the temporary command center, along with the human crew from the New Horizon. We have a problem, Jake began. Each of your cities is working perfectly, but we can't connect them. Commander Kethvar's crystal form pulsed with concern. Without connections, we do not have a colony. We have separate settlements. What we need, Amanda said, studying the construction reports, is a transportation system that doesn't rely on any single species' technology. Impossible, Glocksmar bubbled. All transportation requires specific technological approaches. Ryan looked up from his engineering tablet. Actually, there is one transportation method that works for everyone. What? Asked Wind Rider. Walking, Ryan said with a grin. The aliens stared at him in confusion. I'm serious, Ryan continued. Every one of your species can move on solid ground when necessary. What if we built simple roads and paths that connect all the settlements? Not high-tech. Transportation, just basic routes that everyone can use. But that would be so primitive, Flux 7 flickered. Elena stood up. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best solutions. Roads don't malfunction. They don't interfere with each other. They work for everyone. The proposal was radical. For centuries, each species had used their own advanced transportation methods. The idea of building simple roads seemed like a step backward. But as they discussed it more, the aliens began to see the wisdom in the approach. Roads would be reliable, compatible with all technologies, and easy to maintain. Most importantly, they would require all species to literally walk in each other's footsteps. Within 2 weeks, Construction crews from all 4 species were working together to build the galaxy's first multi-species road network. Zephyrians provided crystal paving, stones that were incredibly durable. Morvans contributed organic materials that made the roads self-repairing. Nexari added energy systems for lighting and communication. Vorthak designed rest stops and viewing areas that took advantage of scenic locations. The humans contributed, something that none of the alien species had, experience with road building. For thousands of years, humans had been creating paths that connected different communities across varied terrain. As the road network took shape, something unexpected happened. Representatives from the different settlements began walking the roads regularly, visiting each other's cities and learning about each other's cultures. Commander Keth Var made the first official journey, walking from the Crystal City to the Marsh Settlement to meet with Glocksmar. The trip took 6 hours, and by the end of it, the 2 alien leaders had developed a friendship based on shared experience and mutual respect. The bipeds were correct, Keth Var reported to his people. Simple solutions often work better than complex ones. The word was spreading throughout hegemony space that the Kepler Prime colony was succeeding beyond all expectations. More importantly, it was succeeding because humans had taught the aliens something new. That progress sometimes meant going back to basics and working together.